It's so difficult to find the words today when words don't seem enough for this Queen, Andrew Bolt.
No, it doesn't. How can you encapsulate 70 years of such devoted service, duty? I mean, it's just incredible. Yeah, it's interesting, Laura. You know, a lot of people are reminiscing about the Queen. And what I find fascinating is that, yeah, apart from the stories about the corgis and her love of racing and all that kind of thing, never has anyone got a really juicy anecdote about some scandal that she was personally involved in, some faux pas she made, some cutting, nasty comment she made on some politician or anything like that. I find that attention to duty, where she was even swearing in Britain's latest Prime Minister just 48 hours before her death, that says so much about her. Very few of the anecdotes, like I heard one today from the former Victorian Premier John Brumby. His anecdote was, well, after the 2009 Black Saturday bushfires in Victoria that was so devastating, he was sending reports, weekly reports about the bushfire and the response and the recovery and all that kind of thing to the Queen. And after 3 months, he thought, well, I better stop with that. I don't want to bore her. And he got a note from the Queen saying, look, please keep going. I want to keep hearing this. I'm really interested. And you think, it's that kind of anecdote that sums her up. I mean, it's not particularly funny or anything, no, but it speaks to the sense of duty for 70 years that has made her so beloved, and that with her death, we now feel there's a sort of sense of stability that's been rocked.
It was never about her. That's what strikes me today. Class, dignity, a sense of duty. And in her death, I mean, it's almost as if she planned it in many ways. She wasn't terribly ill or bedridden, although she was getting more frail by the years. But all of a sudden, we get a note from the palace that her doctors are monitoring her. They're worried about her deteriorating health. And then overnight, Australian time, she slips away without any fuss.
Yeah, and I think the sense of loss is exactly that feeling that we're losing something, not just the person who was quite warm, really, although, outwardly she didn't emote. We're not just losing the person, we're losing a sense of stability and a sense of duty that I think a lot of people instinctively fear is missing. And it's not just the contrast with a wild extreme, like a Meghan Markle and a Prince Harry and a runaway, that kind of thing that's almost like a generational challenge, oh my God, are those the values we're moving to?
Yeah.
I'd sort of hope that Prince William might represent a continuity of that. But I think it's that sense that, can we actually have someone who replicates what a queen really does, that's or a monarch, supposedly, symbolising continuity, stability in such challenging, ever-changing, fast-changing, disconcerting times that people really, look for. I mean, and that was what the great virtue of the monarchy under Queen Elizabeth II.
And for 70 years, she did that, Andrew. She maintained that mystique, that dignity. She was the rock not only for Britain but also the royal family, where other members of the royal family have fallen apart in scandal at different times. But you're right to point out at the very beginning of this conversation that never happened to the Queen, ever.
She kept it really private. I mean, if you see some royals now, how they you hear briefings about how they're furious with this or furious with that, or you get Harry, I was let down, my father, and all this kind of stuff. You never got that from the Queen. You never expected it from the Queen. She must have been tempted so often, like with the cruel attacks after the death of Princess Di that she suffered. She never responded. She never responded. She must have had so many insults, and yet she kept it to herself. She didn't let these things. She didn't let her personal agenda overwhelm her sense of public duty. And I met her once what is it, 1998, I was got some sort of scholarship or whatever. I went to Buckingham Palace, and I was a little overawed, to be honest. But I found a woman so warm, but not just that. She had an interest in Australia that really staggered me. I told her, I said, look, we were talking about the Flying Doctor Service for one, because I grew up for a while in the bush. We were talking about the Flying Doctor Service. I said to her, I'm ashamed that I, as an Australian who lived in these areas where the Flying Doctor, I mean, the Flying Doctor used to land in the area behind the house that I lived in Tarcoola, for instance. I said, you know more about the Flying Doctor Service than I do. It's just, her sense of duty is something I think it'll be really hard to find again. And a lot of people, for instance, with King Charles, are wondering, to what extent is he going to let his personal political views overwhelm the duty that he owes to the crown? He says, oh, yes, I'm not going to let that happen, but he has so far. That is the thing, I think, that now, you know, Britain and the rest of us covered by the monarchy are taking a little breath.
He has enormous shoes to fill. How he governs, how he rules will become immediately apparent, I think, in the next couple of weeks. But Andrew Bolt, a pleasure to talk to you this morning on this momentous occasion.
Thanks, Laura.